as you listen to this section, I want you to try to keep an eye on what's going on the inside of SONSERAY, the character, and what people are seeing on the outside. Okay? Keep an eye on that. SONSERAY saw it all. After demolishing the windshield, he had walked around town for some hours, itching for more windshields. Returning, he broke into the factory for a look around, which wasn't easy, the windows being clapped over with plywood. There was just enough light to see that there was nothing worth seeing. Crummy, trashy floors that creaked and echoed as he walked across them. Emptiness, darkness. Even the dog turd he stepped in was dead, a sawdust cake. He went upstairs. With his trusty foot, he kicked a hole in plywood, and sunlight poured in like milk from a bottle. He saw her at once. In all the panorama before him, the El Dorado below, the other car, the railroad bridge, the whole litterscape, the trees, the rooftops, the sky beyond. His eye locked instantly on the woman in the other car, though at that distance he could cover her with his fingernail. The mother. Without taking his eyes from her, SONSERAY lowered himself to his knees and rested his hands on the sill, his chin on his knuckles. The freshly broken plywood smelled fruity. He watched her walk from the other side of the bridge back to the car. She carried a small cardboard box. He knew what she was doing. She was picking up the 1,000 pieces of glass that he had made, putting them into the box and carrying them off, dumping them in a safe place at a safe distance away from her children. That's what mothers do, protect their children. As she neared the car, he saw her flap her hands at the two little ones, shooing them away. He smiled and nodded. Yes, yes, act mad, scare them away from danger. She was doing it right, doing it perfectly. The boy kept running back, challenging her, disobeying. SONSERAY whispered, stirring dust on the sill. Holler at him. And she did. She did. He could hear her voice and even hear the crossness in it. He hungered to be hollered at. Later, he saw Jack go over and get a good hollering for himself. Now that's kind of odd, right? He hungered to be hollered at. Think about why that could be. Chapter 5. Why? Jack hated himself. For years he'd been asking that question, and for years the answer had been the same. I felt like it. It was futile. It was stupid. 1,000 times he told himself, don't ask, don't ask. And here he was, because the first time brought no answer, asking yet again. Why? I felt like it. Yeah, well, he felt like doing something too, but murder was against the law. It was dark. You'd hear the kid eating in the back seat. Whatever it was, it smelled good. Beefy, cheesy. The kid always ate well, always had money. While Jack waited for his first paycheck, the kid would be living like a king, stuffing his face. I had to go buy plastic for at that hardware store. It cost $1.39. You know how much food I can get for $1.39? The kid snorted. Yeah, 10 bags of that dog food. It's Cheerios and it's good. He took another handful to prove it. I told you not to do nothing. It's the first thing I said, before I ever shut the engine off. Don't do nothing, I said. And I did something. That's right. And he almost said it again. Why? But he caught himself. I disobeyed you. That's right. You gave me an order and I disobeyed. I turned around and did just the opposite. Jack said nothing. He was being mocked, his own oft-uttered words thrown back at him, and as usual, he was late to realize it. Someday you're going to take off and leave me behind like a stray mutt. You'll be in the next state before I know what hit me. That'll teach me. Jack grinned in the dark. How this kid could take words of genuine fury and make them sound silly was a mystery. A stray mutt. Jack almost laughed. He stuffed more fake Cheerios into his mouth to keep it busy. The kid tossed his paper and plastic out the window, then followed them into the darkness. Within seconds, his footsteps were swallowed by the orchestra of insects. No sounds came from the other car. The little kid's quiet at last. Even here, bedtime was bedtime. Page break. Jack woke up when the kid returned, slamming the door, not caring. It seemed hours later, with the moon high on the windshield, when the voice came from the back seat. Did she roller skate? She. Jack's first reaction, as always, was surprise. Maybe once a month, at most, the kid would ask a question about her. That was it. One question a month. And naturally, with the silent stretching and stretching in between, Jack came to assume that the kid had forgotten, was giving it up. So by the time the next question came, it seemed to pop out of nowhere. And yet, the fact that he never said, my mother, only she, and that Jack always knew instantly who she was, told him that no, it did not come from out of nowhere. Did she roller skate? No was the answer, but hardly the story. How about, did she try to roller skate? He could remember it like yesterday, actually better than yesterday. He and Noreen had found these old-time metal skates, the kind you clamp onto the bottom of your shoes. 2 pairs in somebody's trash. So they put them on and off they go, first time for both of them, and Jack's rolling down the sidewalk like he's been doing it all his life. When he hears the crash and scream behind him and veers onto somebody's grass to stop and look. And there she is, off the curb and into the street and halfway under a parked car, laughing. That was the thing, laughing. She picked herself up and just like that was down again. And that's how it went. Jack sailing up and down the street while Noreen bounced from car to pole to pedestrian like a pinball, and both of them laughing. But Noreen especially, laughing like she couldn't get enough of it, laughing like he'd never heard her since. Just about the best day of his life, now they thought about it. Did she roller skate? Jack knew the question would never be asked again. It would stay shiny and new, rustless as a showroom Cadillac, for years if need be, until answered. Still, he wasn't helpless, for there were answers, and the power of delay was his. But the only power he had, it was, and he used it, holding back on the answers and the stories he could tell this boy about his mother. Before the craziness, the rebellion, the drugs, the overdose, Jack was the only one left who remembered her as a kid. And maybe it was there even then, but what did Jack know? He was only a kid himself. And if his sister woke him up one morning by wrapping a worm around his toe, well, hey, and that was just Noreen. He could tell the kid about the time she punched a boy in the nose, or the time she painted the grass red, or the night she and Jack snuck out of the house and caterwauled like alley cats outside the window of a neighbor. He could ramble for hours, for days, and don't think he wasn't tempted. But why should he? What had the kid ever done for him? Did the kid ever offer to share his food? Did he ever say thank you? Ever apologize for being a traveling volcano? For losing Jack jobs in 7 states? So Jack doled out the answers, one word at a time, one per month, and received in return some small grim satisfaction that in one area at least he held the upper hand, even if the kid didn't know it. Did she roller skate? He waited a little more, then delivered the answer at last into the darkness. And now we start a new chapter. 6. No. SONSERAY thought of it as a jigsaw puzzle, thousands of pieces spread out in front of him. Each piece was a memory, or a question already asked or awaiting. If the answer was yes, 2 pieces fit together. If no, the piece went sailing. There were many more question pieces than memory pieces. Only a few fit together so far, giving teasing, disjointed glimpses. A little red-haired girl on roller skates would not be one of them. Sometimes he wanted to ask all the questions, one right after the other, take up a whole day, a week if need be, not even eat. But then he would be distracted, would catch sight of a mother still going strong. He could spot them a mile off, yanking her kid along or snapping, "Put that back," or just being by herself. Oh yeah, even the ones alone. If the kid wasn't with them, they were on their way to pick the kid up. From the minute they left the kid off somewhere, the rest of the day was nothing more than a long U-turn back to pickup. Guaranteed. They carried the smell of kid wherever they went. And they were everywhere, the mothers. They reached into the cupboard in their kitchens and pulled out their credit cards in the supermarkets and drove their cars and jogged in pink lace sneakers. The world was full, stuffed, overrun with mothers. They were as common as dirt and more rare than a 50-cent piece in the gutter. He loved them and he hated them, and he hated their kids. He hated their smugness. He hated most of all those moments in a mall outside a toy store when the kid would hold something out to his mother that he no longer cared to carry and would say, no, command, hold this. Maybe not even hold it out. Maybe just dump it into her bag and say nothing and not even look at her. His trailing hand leaving the thing behind as the rest of him was already tearing into the store. And the mother takes the thing, accepts the thing. What else? She's the mother. And SONSERAY would want to yell at the kid in the store. Hey, don't be so smug. I'm not as alone as I look. I've got one of them too, you know. But of course, he didn't. He hadn't had one since he was 10. When she died somewhere 200 miles north of Chicago, he was told. And hadn't lived with one since he was 5, when she left him with Jack, who then had a job and a wife. And he was feeling bad about that drained away his wanting to ask 1,000 questions. And it was remembering, hey, wait, but I really did have one once, that encouraged him to now and again ask a solitary question. That, and like yesterday, the sight of a girl on roller skates. No. He sent that puzzle piece sailing. So, in that interaction between SONSERAY and his Uncle Jack, we get to see how both of them have things going on inside of them that they're not sharing with the other, and how that is affecting their relationship. So I want you to think about that as you witness what happens next. He could not believe it. After all that happened yesterday, chapter 7. He could not believe it. After all that happened yesterday, here they were again, back at the car. The mouse droppings, poking their heads in the one open window. The smell of dream bacon curled one last time through his mind and was gone. Hey, Super Dupe, come out and play. He closed his eyes against the bright sun. The name's SONSERAY. They pounded on the car. Hey, silly dilly. Hey, soupy poopy. They howled at their own wit. Where was the older sister? It wasn't the name-calling that finally brought him out of the car. It was the braying, pipsqueak voices that he knew would never allow another second's sleep. They stood by the upside-down washing machine, the boy pest waving something in his hand. Look what I got and you don't. SONSERAY yawned and stretched. What? A hockey puck, I found it. Ha-ha. He turned around, stuck out his softball-sized rear end, and waggled it. The girl pest did the same. SONSERAY started off toward town. He heard them run after him. My mom says you're crazy, snarled the boy, suddenly not so playful. She says you're a lunatic. You don't belong on the streets, snarled the girl. Yeah, you ought to be locked up. You ought to be in a cage. Yeah, and you know what else, huh? They were walking backwards in front of him, their heads jerking forward with every word. You're a bum, shrieked the boy. A bum, yelled the girl. A bim boom bum biddy bam boom bum. They were rolling on their backs in the yellow dust, and the older sister was coming now, running, calling, playing mommy. Leave him alone! Mirth made the runs careless. 2 steps and SONSERAY was above the boy. He snatched the hockey puck from the tiny hand and started walking. Instantly, they were at his legs, clawing and squalling. But then the big sister was pulling them off, and the noise died out as he walked on. He tossed the puck away. And then there's a page break. Miles, minutes meant little to SONSERAY. He knew only that he wanted for a time. He knew only that he walked for a time and came to a shopping mall. He went in. At Hickory Farms, a pudgy black-haired lady smiled when he stopped at a platter of bratwurst samples. A dozen dice-sized pieces sat impaled on toothpicks. The lady nodded approvingly as he plucked one up and dipped it into the little white bowl of sweet mustard. She giggled as he captured the sample delicately between his front teeth and withdrew the toothpick with the flourish of a swordsman. Her eyebrows went up, awaiting his opinion. He tilted his head, closed his eyes in thoughtful chewing. He swallowed. He nodded. Good. And she beamed. By the fourth or fifth sample, she was no longer beaming. After the 12th, as SONSERAY, for the 12th time, nodded and pronounced, good. She stared coldly at the empty platter. And then, when he, with a devilish grin, plunged his finger into the mustard bowl, she reached out instinctively and smacked his hand. Off he swaggered, so pleased with himself, licking his finger, just another rude teenager. She carried off the plate and contaminated bowl to the back. When she returned with replacements, she noticed him 3 shops down, just standing there staring at her. She wondered if she should call security. SONSERAY roamed. He did not like this kind of mall. It was fake. It pretended it was outdoors with its trees and long-tongued plants, and the sky showing through glass panels and a vaulting roof. Indoors should be indoors. Should feel indoors, with box-shaped rooms and walls and ceilings so you can't see through. Mothers were everywhere, strolling the glossy black corridor floors, shopping the stores, waiting in checkout lines, resting on benches. All wore either sandals or sneakers. He especially liked the ones with brightly colored socks. Few had their kids by the hand, but in most cases the kids had no physical attachment to their mothers. And yet, as SONSERAY knew from countless hours of watching, an attachment was there. Except for the occasional toddler who would walk all the way to Cleveland if you let him. The kids seemed tied to an invisible string that kept drawing them back like yo-yos. He listened. As some people listened for bird calls, SONSERAY listened for mothers. All about him he heard them, directing, snapping, soothing, threatening, promising, yesing, knowing. Wait till we get homing. Behind him, one of them called, William, here! SONSERAY turned. He began walking toward the voice, making his way through the shoppers. It was a game he sometimes played. As the mother's scanning eyes landed on him, the real William rushed into her. As her arms received her son, her eyes stayed with the teenage boy coming toward her. Staring so directly, so boldly, SONSERAY waited until the last step, the mother's eyes widening, before veering off, having sniffed, having tasted. Teenage girls came racing down the corridor. Mom! They yelled. Shoes squeaking as they pulled up to a woman in a satiny lavender jogging suit and a lavender ribbon cinching her ponytail. The taller girl was beside herself, pawing at her mother. We found them. There's 2 left. They're only $30. The lavender mother kept walking, scanning windows. For 2? She said. The girl screeched. No, Mom, for 1. But it's nothing. They're on sale. Can we get them now? You said, please. SONSERAY, standing before a pretzel shop, whispered to himself, We'll see. The mother patted the frantic girl on the head. We'll see, she said, and walked into a card shop. The girl behind the counter in the pretzel shop was rolling out ropes of dough, cutting them into foot-long lengths, looping them into pretzels. SONSERAY picked one up, flung it past the startled girl. It smacked into the glass door of the oven, where it sagged like the body of a wall-whipped snake. Farther down the hall, SONSERAY entered a toy store. He walked up and down the aisles. By the time he came out, he had broken the legs off a plastic ironing board, cracked 3 toy cannons in half, poked his finger through too many plastic package windows to count, and pulled the heads from 2 dolls, one of which squawked. A display of paperbacks, their covers gaudy as jungle books, caught his attention in a bookstore window. He halted for a minute, staring, then rode the escalator to the 2nd floor, walking faster now. He scooped up a handful of sand from a trash and ashtray stand and dumped it into the coffee cup of a lady sitting outside a Cinnabon shop. He plucked the baseball cap from a sandy-haired head and frisbeed it over the railing down to the 1st floor. He kicked the bulging shopping bag of a teenage girl and swiped an ice cream cone from the hand of a little kid. Shouting erupted behind him. The mall music stopped, and a voice seeming to come from the glass-paneled sky above said, Code 9, Code 9. Back on the 1st floor, he whirled through a video arcade, punching buttons, jerking joysticks, sending the place into an uproar. And then, outside a dollar store, he saw the scene that if he waited long enough, he always came across. Boy, mother, a moment of smug contention. The boy was holding a white plastic bag out to her. He was whining. You hold it. She was saying, it's your stuff. You hold it. Nothing made SONSERAY's blood boil more. Uh-oh. He swooped past them, snatching the bag from the ingrate's hand. He whirled, came back, and growled into the kid's shell-shocked face, the kid's head snapping back as if punched. You little jerk! It was time to run. Behind him, he heard the mother's footsteps, defending her cub. She would step in front of a cement truck to save him. He loved her for that. And he burst through the door and into the parking lot. He had to fight the impulse to turn and rush into her arms. 5 minutes later, he was half a mile from the mall, strolling down a bright sidewalk, bordered by crew-cut lawns and yellow pansies. Now, I'm going to stop right there, and I want you to think about this fascination he has for watching mothers and their children, and that anger that boiled up inside of him when he saw the little boy whining about carrying his own bag. So you'll be asked questions about these kinds of things. But as you're listening, I want you to be putting all these pieces together. Okay? That's it for right now. Bye.